Welcome back to Finance Empire Real Life Stories. Before we begin tonight's story, I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded city at night. Cars are rushing past you, neon lights are flashing everywhere, thousands of people are walking beside you. But suddenly you realize you have no phone, no money, no map, and no way to contact anyone. Would you panic? Would you know how to survive? Or would you completely fall apart? Because tonight's story is not just about losing a phone, it's about losing control. It's about discovering how dependent we've become on tiny glowing screens. And most importantly, it's about learning that sometimes the only thing that can save you is your own mind. This is the story of Liam, a young man who thought he understood the city around him until one terrible night forced him to survive it the old-fashioned way. No apps, no GPS, no digital wallet, no shortcuts. And trust me, what started as a normal Saturday afternoon slowly turned into one of the longest nights of his entire life. So sit back, relax, and listen carefully, because this story is packed with powerful English vocabulary, emotional expressions, survival phrases, and real-life lessons that could actually help you one day. And if you've ever felt lost in a big city or disconnected from the world around you, this story is going to hit very close to home. Now let's begin. The late afternoon sun painted the downtown streets in shades of orange and gold as Liam wandered through the crowded neighbourhood, with his hands tucked casually into his jacket pockets. The city felt alive around him. Music drifted from open restaurant doors. Street performers gathered crowds near the subway entrance. The smell of roasted coffee and grilled food floated through the cool evening air. For the first time in weeks, Liam felt relaxed. His work had been exhausting lately. Endless deadlines, constant notifications. Emails arriving faster than he could answer them. Every day felt like a race against time. But today was different. Today, he had escaped his apartment and allowed himself to simply walk without thinking about meetings, bills, or responsibilities. He explored hidden alleyways filled with colourful murals. He browsed tiny bookstores and vintage clothing shops. He even stopped to watch a street magician pull coins out of children's ears while tourists applauded loudly around him. The city felt magical. But magic has a strange way of disappearing without warning. As the sky slowly darkened, Liam finally decided it was time to head home. He leaned against a brick wall near a bus stop and casually reached into his pocket to check the bus schedule on his phone. His fingers touched empty fabric. At first, his brain refused to process it. He checked the other pocket. Nothing. Then his jacket pocket. Nothing. His breathing instantly changed. That calm, peaceful feeling vanished like smoke in the wind. A cold wave of panic rushed through his body as he searched faster and faster, patting every pocket with growing desperation. No, he whispered under his breath. His wallet was gone too. Suddenly the noise of the city became overwhelming. Car horns sounded sharper. Sirens screamed in the distance. The crowd around him blurred into a moving wall of strangers. 10 seconds ago, Liam had been a normal guy enjoying a perfect Saturday. Now he was stranded in one of the biggest cities in the country with absolutely nothing. No phone, no money, no GPS, no digital bus pass, no apartment keys. And the worst part, he didn't know a single phone number by memory. Not his parents, not his best friend, not even his roommate. Every connection in his life existed inside that missing device. Liam leaned against the wall, trying to steady himself. His heart hammered violently in his chest as terrifying thoughts rushed through his mind. What if someone stole it? What if they accessed his bank accounts? What if they used his cards? What if he couldn't get home tonight? For a brief moment, he felt completely helpless. It shocked him how quickly a person could go from confident to powerless. One missing object had erased his sense of security entirely. Around him, people hurried through the streets staring down at their glowing screens. Everyone looked connected. Everyone looked certain about where they were going. Meanwhile, Liam felt invisible, like a ghost wandering through a machine that no longer recognized him. But deep down, he knew panic would only make things worse, so he closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe slowly. Think, where had he been during the last hour? He mentally replayed his afternoon like scenes from a movie. The crowded park, the coffee shop, the magician near the subway entrance. Without wasting another second, Liam sprinted back toward the park. His shoes pounded against the pavement as he pushed through crowds of tourists and office workers. Sweat dripped down the side of his face, despite the cool air. When he finally reached the bench where he had been sitting earlier, an elderly man was feeding pigeons there peacefully. No phone. Liam crouched down and searched beneath the bench anyway, his hands brushing against cigarette butts and damp leaves. Nothing. His stomach twisted painfully. Next, he rushed to the coffee shop. The small bell above the door rang loudly as he burst inside, almost out of breath. The young barista looked up from the espresso machine with tired eyes. "Please tell me someone turned in a phone," Liam said desperately. The barista gave him an apologetic smile before he even finished speaking. "Sorry, man. Nobody's brought anything in." The answer hit Liam like a punch to the chest. He stepped back outside into the growing darkness, feeling smaller than he had ever felt before. The city no longer looked exciting. Now it looked dangerous. Every street seemed unfamiliar. Every stranger seemed distant. Liam suddenly realised how little attention he normally paid to the real world around him. His phone had always guided him everywhere. It remembered addresses for him. It remembered directions. It remembered birthdays, passwords, numbers, schedules, and locations. Without it, his own memory felt weak and useless. He walked aimlessly through the crowded sidewalk, trying to think of a solution. Finally, he gathered enough courage to approach a businessman waiting near a crosswalk. "Excuse me," Liam said nervously. "Could I borrow your phone for one quick call? I lost mine." The businessman barely looked at him. He tightened his grip on his briefcase and stepped away as the traffic light changed. Liam felt humiliation burn across his face. A few minutes later, he tried asking a young woman outside a pharmacy. She immediately clutched her purse tighter and avoided eye contact before walking away quickly. That hurt even more. He understood their fear. Cities teach people not to trust strangers. But being treated like a threat when you genuinely need help creates a special kind of loneliness. For the first time all night, Liam realised something terrifying. In a city filled with millions of people, a person can still feel completely alone. Eventually, he wandered into a tiny convenience store glowing beneath a flickering neon sign. The older shopkeeper behind the counter watched him carefully as Liam approached. "I'm really sorry," Liam said quietly. "I lost my phone and my wallet tonight. Is there any chance I could use your landline?" The old man studied him silently for several seconds. Then, without speaking, he slid an old black telephone across the counter. Relief flooded through Liam's chest. "Thank you," he said quickly as he grabbed the receiver. But the moment he heard the dial tone, his relief disappeared. Because suddenly he realised something horrifying. He didn't know who to call. His mind went completely blank. He could picture his mother's smile perfectly. He could hear his best friend's laugh. He knew exactly what his apartment looked like. But the actual numbers? Gone. Stored inside a device that wasn't there anymore. Liam stared at the keypad helplessly while the dial tone buzzed loudly in his ear. After several painful seconds, he slowly placed the receiver back down. "I don't know any numbers," he admitted softly. The old shopkeeper sighed sympathetically, but there was nothing he could do. Liam stepped back outside into the cold night air, feeling more disconnected than ever before. And deep down, a frightening realization settled into his chest. Technology had made his life easier, but it had also made him dependent. The city lights flickered above him as darkness fully swallowed the streets, and Liam still had no idea how he was going to make it home. But what happened next would completely change the way he saw the world forever. Because sometimes losing everything digital is the only thing that forces us to reconnect with reality itself. And trust me, Liam's night was only getting started. "I'll see you in part 2. Liam leaned back against the cold wall of the bus station, exhaustion settling deep into his bones like wet concrete. Around him, the city continued moving at full speed. Taxi lights flashed across rain-soaked streets. Strangers hurried past carrying shopping bags, coffee cups, and glowing phones that illuminated their tired faces. Nobody noticed the young man, sitting alone with nothing in his pockets except a folded map and a handwritten list of phone numbers. For the first time in years, Liam understood how fragile modern life really was. Just yesterday morning, he had felt completely secure. He had money in the bank, food in his apartment, and a phone powerful enough to guide him anywhere in the world. Yet one careless moment had erased all of it. No GPS, no digital wallet, no contacts, no access to his own identity. And the worst part wasn't losing the device, It was realizing how helpless he had become without it. He watched a businessman nearby argue loudly into a wireless headset while staring at 3 different screens at once. A teenage girl stood under a streetlight filming a dance video instead of watching traffic. Even an elderly couple sitting together on the bench barely spoke to each other because both were scrolling endlessly through their phones. The entire city looked connected, but somehow it also looked lonely. Liam pulled the folded paper from his pocket again. The ink had smudged slightly from sweat and rain, but the words were still readable. His mother's number, his best friend's number, his landlord's address. Important details he should have memorized years ago. He laughed softly to himself. A few hours ago he couldn't even remember a single phone number. Now he guarded that tiny piece of paper like it was treasure. A bus rolled into the station with a long mechanical hiss. People immediately rushed forward in a chaotic wave. Liam stayed seated for a moment, simply observing. Normally he would have checked transit apps, compared routes and calculated arrival times down to the second. Tonight he relied only on instinct and patience. Oddly enough, it felt freeing. His stomach growled again, louder this time. The adrenaline had faded completely now, leaving behind pure physical exhaustion. He glanced toward a nearby food cart where steam rose into the chilly night air. The smell nearly broke him. Grilled onions, fresh bread, fried meat. Realizing he still had a few dollars left after buying the bus pass, Liam slowly approached the vendor. The man behind the cart had thick grey eyebrows and tired eyes that suggested he had worked these streets for decades. "What can I get you?" the vendor asked. Liam checked the crumpled bills in his hand. "What's the cheapest thing you have?" The vendor studied him carefully before pointing toward a small hot dog wrapped in foil. "That one." Liam nodded gratefully and handed over the cash. The food wasn't fancy. The bun was slightly cold and the mustard tasted overly sharp. But as he took the first bite, relief washed through his entire body. It tasted like survival. He sat near the edge of the station, eating slowly, while watching buses disappear into the night one after another. For years he had rushed through meals while checking notifications or answering emails. Tonight there was no screen demanding his attention. Only silence. Only the city breathing around him. For the first time in a long while, Liam actually noticed the world. He noticed the tired janitor sweeping cigarette butts into a pile near the curb. He noticed the woman singing softly to herself while waiting for the midnight bus. He noticed the exhausted father carrying a sleeping child on his shoulder. Without digital distractions, human life suddenly looked louder, heavier, and more real. A cold gust of wind pushed through the station, making Liam zip up his jacket tighter. His thoughts drifted toward home. He imagined his apartment exactly as he had left it that morning. Dirty dishes probably still sat in the sink. A pile of unfolded laundry rested on the couch. His charger remained plugged uselessly into the wall, waiting for a phone that was gone forever. Yet strangely, the apartment no longer represented comfort. Home now meant something different. Home meant safety, memory, human connection. The things technology could support but never replace. Liam looked around the station again and noticed an older homeless man sitting several benches away, quietly feeding crumbs to pigeons. People avoided eye contact with him as they walked past. Some looked uncomfortable. Others pretended not to see him at all. Earlier that night, Liam himself had felt invisible too. That realization hit him hard. For a few terrifying hours, he had experienced what it meant to exist outside the system. No digital identity, no access to money, no instant communication. Without technology, society suddenly treated him differently. People became suspicious, distant, careful. It scared him how quickly human value could disappear when convenience disappeared. The homeless man suddenly looked over and caught Liam staring. Instead of anger, the man simply smiled faintly. "You look like you had a rough night," he said. Liam let out a tired laugh. "You have no idea." The man nodded like someone who understood more than words could explain. City can chew people up if they aren't paying attention. Liam sat quietly for a moment before responding. "Yeah, I think I finally realised that tonight." The old man tossed another crumb toward the pigeons. "Funny thing is," he said softly, "people think phones make them less lost. Sometimes they just stop learning how to find themselves." The sentence settled heavily into Liam's chest, because deep down he knew it was true. He had spent years depending on technology to think for him. Directions, reminders, contacts, payments, even conversations. His phone had become an extension of his brain, and without it he had panicked like a child abandoned in the wilderness. The realization was uncomfortable. But it was also strangely empowering. Because if he survived tonight once, he could survive it again. A notification sound suddenly echoed from someone else's phone nearby. Instinctively, Liam reached for his empty pocket before stopping himself. He smiled at the reflex to arm. Even now, his body still expected the digital world to answer him instantly. But tonight had taught him something important. Silence wasn't always dangerous. Sometimes silence forced you to wake up. The next bus finally arrived with a screech of brakes. Liam stood slowly, legs aching from hours of walking. As he climbed aboard, he glanced once more at the city skyline glowing against the dark horizon. Earlier it had looked overwhelming, hostile, impossible. Now it simply looked human, messy, loud, imperfect, and alive. He found a seat near the back and rested his head against the cool window glass. The bus pulled away from the station, carrying him deeper into the sleeping city. Outside, neon reflections rippled across puddles like broken pieces of light. Liam closed his eyes briefly. Tomorrow he would replace his phone, replace his cards, replace everything he had lost. But some things wouldn't go back to normal. Tomorrow he would memorize important numbers, carry emergency cash, pay attention to landmarks instead of blue dots, talk to people more often, look up instead of down. Because getting stranded hadn't just exposed his weakness, it had exposed how disconnected he truly was from the real world around him. As the bus disappeared into the night, Liam stared out at the endless maze of streets ahead and took a slow, steady breath. For the first time all day, he wasn't afraid anymore, and somewhere beyond the glowing lights of the city, another challenge was already waiting for him, a challenge that would force him to choose between trusting strangers or risking everything alone. I'll see you there.